bottom of the trenches, as it always is, everything you throw away. Not a pleasant way to spend your day. Now, here's the incoming sort of artillery in on those trenches, what you hear, and here's the forward observers now that are calling the fire back out against them. Again, your average diamond trench. Now, here's a trench after battle, and it does look like it. The rifle, the gas mask, the dead body, the kind of thing you always see after a good, solid engagement in a trench.
Marine General George Chris, our consultant. Thank you, General. Let's check in now with David Dow, who is outside Camp Pendleton, California, and he has a report on the mood of one community.
Any Saturday night. Home of the Camp Pendleton Marines. But inside, all eyes were on the televised war coverage. News of the long-awaited ground campaign brought a change to this setting and support for President Bush. The thoughts were of friends or relatives in the Gulf as the president called for prayer.
May God bless and protect each and every one of them, and may God bless the United States of America. Thank you very much.
Our hearts are with them, and our souls are with them, and I want them all to come home safely and peacefully. I want it to be over.
We're a military town, and we have a lot of friends that are over there, and we're concerned for them, and just hope that it's over as soon as possible. I think we're doing the right thing.
A lot of tension inside, but behind the president 100%.
When Marine Sergeant Thomas Flack left for the Gulf last August, he left behind his wedding plans and fiancée Don Iliescu.
I knew it was going to come to this, and I try to be as strong as I can.
Trish Harvey was married 1 month before her husband was sent to the Gulf. Tonight she watched amid reports that he and other members of the 1st Marine Division were in the thick of the new ground campaign.
Truthfully, he was just scared. He really didn't want to be there, but it's his job. To him, it's going over there. He's going to go over there, do his job as a Marine, and then come home.
Tonight, Marine families face the same prospect as the rest of us. A long period with little official information about the mounting ground offensive. They had been told to expect that. They're finding it a difficult necessity to live with. Dan?
This is not an election, but if preliminary results mean anything, it will be the Allies by a landslide. 1, dramatic victories in every battle in which we have reports. 2, the Iraqis simply have no air cover. But the stiffest test is yet to come. Out there in the desert somewhere, General Schwarzkopf thinks he knows exactly where is the Republican Guard, Saddam Hussein's last hope, his only hope for a victory of any significance. Joining us now is Dr. Hussan al-Sanad, who is Kuwait's Deputy of Information. Thank you for being with us. We appreciate you being here. What can you tell us about what's happening and what we can look for in the coming hours and days?
Well, to us, the events unfolding in the past few hours are very important events. We've been waiting for it for 6 months, and as we see it, following it, minute by minute, hour by hour, we are seeing the end of the occupation of our land, the beginning of the liberation of Kuwait, freeing it from the tyrant in Baghdad. And what we are hearing is good news, such as the liberation of Failaka Island, which is the one of the populated islands in Kuwait. And we are looking forward to the unfolding events in the few today and tomorrow.
What are you hearing about the oil well fires that have been set by Saddam Hussein's forces?
We've been hearing a lot. We've been hearing that he is systematically setting them on fire. Actually, we had information much earlier, about 2 or 3 months ago, that he mined all the oil fields in Kuwait, waiting for this desperate minute and last move. So here it is. He started setting them on fire, but unfortunately they kept lying to the world that it is the doing of the Allied forces.
But we just heard a gentleman, a respected scholar in Jordan, say Actually, he suggested, he didn't outright say, that a lot of this is just propaganda. This talk of Saddam setting oil wells afire and arresting people and executing people. Address yourself to that, please.
Well, I understand exactly what he's saying because I've been in Jordan last month, and I am a Kuwaiti. I have been in Kuwait when the Iraqi troops invaded. I'm proud to be an Arab. I'm proud to be a Muslim. I'm proud to be a Kuwaiti. My response to this colleague in Jordan, that he is ignorant, he's deceiving himself, just like the Iraqi leader and the Iraqi Ba'ath regime is deceiving their people. We're seeing them being bounded, their planes being destroyed, and they are claiming hundreds of planes of the Allies are being shut down. This is the whole world is seeing it. Unfortunately, they don't want to to see facts and of life. What is happening? What is happening exactly is an aggression upon peaceful country, a reign of terror that's been going on for 6 months, being escalated the last 2 weeks. People were rounded up from the streets. Just last night, we heard the news from Kuwait that they were taking people, anyone in the street, any Kuwaiti in the street, they are picking them up. Just 2 days ago, they rounded people after a Friday prayer. They are coming out of the ceremony, they rounded them up in buses and trucks. So my response to him, that I did get in my hand, I have a proof of it also, report from Jordan itself. Some Palestinian friends of mine, whom I have taught in Kuwait University, they worked in the oil industry in Kuwait. They gave me reports about detailed reports about the mining of the oil in the field. We have it, and I have sent it to my government when I came back from Jordan.
So it isn't propaganda, it's fact.
I know it is for sure, it's fact, and I have been these people when they came over to my country, rampaging.
Thank you very much for being with us. We hope you will be back in your country and home again soon.
Thanks
so much for being with us. As the ground war offensive rumbles, here are headlines of the hour. President Bush declares the war to liberate Kuwait has, quote, entered a final phase. U.S. and allied ground forces are reported advancing into occupied Kuwait and maneuvering in southern Iraq. Baghdad remains officially silent. A single Scud missile has been fired at Saudi Arabia. Allied ground forces are said to be moving rapidly northward on at least 4 fronts. Now, this comes from Arab sources and from British sources. Some units plunging up to 18 miles into Kuwait, other units going into southern Iraq. All of this within the first 2 hours of the offensive that was launched about 5 hours ago. These reports come from Saudi and British sources. The Pentagon, under its new rules, refuses to comment. As the attack began, the Kuwaiti news agency reported that the small island that was referred to earlier near Kuwait City was captured with the surrender of some 500 to 1,000 Iraqi soldiers. The UN Security Council met briefly late last night, but the meeting broke up after 20 minutes, delegates saying ceasefire efforts were being abandoned. Now, numbers can tell a story. They can mean something. We're talking about, we mentioned there, the report that as the Marines invaded with an amphibious assault that island that controls the access to Kuwait City, that they took 500 to 1,000 prisoners. The number of prisoners taken early in this ground war will give us a good indication of how tough or how easy the task of liberating Kuwait is going to be. The early indications are that a lot of prisoners are being taken. Joining us now is Lieutenant Colonel Ronan Grisson, the Israeli Army spokesman. Colonel, first of all, I hope that I pronounced your name correctly. Thank you for being with us. What do you know about what's going on inside the offensive?
Well, we know as much as you do, or perhaps even a little less. Of course, we keep abreast of the developments. All I can say right now is that we congratulate Allied forces for taking this move at this stage, and we hope that they prosecute this phase of the war as successfully as they have done the first phase of the air operations.
Colonel, you have so much combat experience. What should we look for in the coming hours and days? What will be the telltale signs of how the battle is going?
Well, I would say that I would be very cautious in trying to draw conclusions from past battle, past combat to what is happening right now in the Gulf. This is a different war, different technology, superior air power, which is in full control, devastating artillery power of Allied forces. So it would be very premature to give now an assessment. What I do believe is that U.S. and Allied forces will be able to use all those advantages in order to shorten the war, to minimize casualties, and avoid the direct contact which was so evident in past wars in the Korea and World War II. And I'm sure all these elements were taken into consideration when this ground offensive was planned.
What about your own forces? What are they doing as this Allied ground attack grinds into Kuwait and southern Iraq?
Well, what I can say about Israel in general, that we woke up to another morning of what we call an emergency routine. And after consultation which were taking place in the Defense Ministry throughout the night, we decided still to resume normal life in Israel today. And all the schools were open, people went back to work. Of course, our forces are in a high state of alert and readiness to meet any new developing contingencies. But as of now, we don't see any increase in the threat dimensions that we faced for the past 38 days of this campaign. So we will, as you say, roll with the punches and continue with our emergency routine. And of course, if there are new developments and new threats emerging, we'll be prepared to meet them.
Colonel, thanks for being with us. Good luck. Our CBS News coverage of the ground offensive here in and around the Persian Gulf continues.
The next step, ground war or peace. Can a deal be hammered out? What will the U.S. accept? Watch Defense Secretary Dick Cheney face the nation with Leslie Stahl Sunday.
We fought World War I to make the world safe for democracy. Are we fighting this war to make the world safe for the Kuwaiti royal family? Will the same old princes still be wallowing in the same old luxury? Or are they ready to trade a little royalty for a little democracy? 60 Minutes is with them at their capital in exile. Watch 60 Minutes, Sunday.
Trapped in a real-life nightmare of multiple personalities.
It's like having amnesia, not knowing who you are.
There's only one way out, a harrowing journey through her own past. The Many Faces of Marcia, a special 48 hours, Wednesday at 10, 9 Central and Mountain.
She loved him. Maybe too much.
You can't go for murder without bodies. Then find the bodies.
Now, she has two choices.
If you don't take the stand on your own behalf, you're going to prison.
Let him confront the death penalty.
What happened on that island?
Or face it herself.
Tell me.
And the sea will tell. Sunday. Two horse breeders in a bitter feud. Did one help the other kick the bucket?
This is one tip that came straight from the horse's mouth.
An all-new murder, she wrote. Sunday.
I'm Charles Carroll. The water's running out in California. Time for drastic measures? Join us this Sunday morning.
The Salvation Army, serving the needs of the world through the years.
Pressure, pressure, pressure. Pressure, the name of the war game that General Norman Schwarzkopf is applying to Saddam Hussein's forces. Combat aircraft continue to leave this area here at Dhahran. You can hear them in the background during our broadcast. They continue to leave in great numbers for points north. From the outside, the campaign to free Kuwait appears to be going like clockwork. Obviously the result of careful planning and preparation. The results so far speak for themselves. One of the important things to watch as General Schwarzkopf's plan unfolds is his desire, his absolute determination to stay flexible, be opportunistic, to stay inside the enemy's decision cycle, which means once the enemy moves, if he moves, to hammer him, keep hammering, pressure, the name of the game. Our CBS News coverage of the ground war offensive will continue in a moment, live from Saudi Arabia, so stay here with us. Now, the air-land battle doctrine, which is the book of the U.S. military, was designed to allow our forces to fight outnumbered and win in Europe. U.S. and Allied forces are outnumbered in the whole theater, if you take into account all of Iraq's forces, all of Saddam Hussein's forces. But in the areas right along the Saudi Arabian border with Kuwait and Iraq, the figures are believed to break down to about 500,000 plus for Saddam Hussein and his Iraqi army, perhaps as many as 700,000 if you count the forces at sea for the U.S. And its allies. So the hope is that the air-land battle doctrine will have a very good time in the desert and make it a short war based on a very quick attack designed for a quick victory. But Secretary of Defense Cheney said earlier in the evening, no one should get carried away with optimism. There can be some very difficult times and days ahead. Let's go to Bob Schieffer with our military consultants in New York. Robert?
Well, Dan, that is exactly what the top Marine over there, General Walter Boomer, has told his staff. He is quoted as saying, "I've had to caution my staff. The operation has gone almost too well so far." But hearing you report that the operation is going like clockwork, getting the reports from British officials and Kuwaiti officials, we thought we might talk about that a little bit here at the map with General Chris. General, why don't you explain to us what's happened here?
Well, the initial reports they were getting in, Bob, are very favorable. It's been reported the 7th Corps is now 12 miles within on what has been described as a flanking movement. In the Marine area, they're some 18 miles in. In this area right in here, there have been 300 prisoners taken, 18 T-62, which are good tanks, killed already to date. They're beginning to approach the second lines of defense. So what we know now from these foreign publications, this operation is going very, very well.
Now, these, if I remember what you had said early on, General, maybe the toughest fight would not be along this first line, that perhaps this would not be where the best of Iraq soldiers would be.
Exactly right, Bob. These frontline units are the ones from which the desertions have been taking place, and we've always questioned the morale of those units. What we have to watch now is what is known as the second echelon units. These are the units back here, armored and mechanized, which are not Republican Guards, but they're just a cut below. They're very good units and tough units, and we'll have to wait and see how they react.
General, let's talk about just what is going on the battlefield. The troops are there. We know the tanks are there. What is taking place right now?
Well, on this end, they obviously have done a pretty good job of clearing their way through the minefields, and they're bypassing, I suspect, any tough points of resistance, any of those really big fortifications that are holding out. This going right around them is slicing through them. On this end, I think they're probably rolling. It's a little bit more wide open down here. They're just outside the Iraqi defenses. They're probably moving pretty fast. By the end of this day, I don't know where they're going to be, but they're obviously rolling.
We have talked from time to time about what an enormous battle this is. What are there, 2,000 tanks, I suppose, along there?
I would say just in this group alone, there's about 2,000 tanks moving. And there's another 1,400 or so down in here.
Now, moving with the tanks, there are also armored personnel carriers, infantry is there. Engineer units, we've seen graphics of these so-called scissor bridges. Talk about how that works. How does that work as they move along there?
Well, I suspect, Bob, at this point in time, you're seeing tanks and mechanized infantry moving out to clear the way. I don't think the big armored formations have quite cracked loose yet. When those guys go, they're going to roar north somewhere up in here. So this is the operation to clear the way, get the units in front out of the way, and those are probably mechanized, which have tanks with them, and soldiers riding in those armored personnel carriers, those Bradleys that you've seen, getting the things opened up.
Just a layman's question, General. We talk about this great movement in. Why not go right into Baghdad?
Baghdad? Well, Baghdad is what? About 360 some odd miles to the north. It's a city of 4 million people. It's got at least 2 big divisions up there. It's a hostile city. We have our hands full, I think, just taking care of the army here, never mind trying to do a march to Baghdad, Bob.
All right, General Chris. Well, that's it from here, Dan. Back to you.
Thanks, Bob. Every war brings out the noblest and the worst behavior in human beings. That's the way it is with war. In the rape of Kuwait, Saddam Hussein and his soldiers have showed the worst side. The U.S. and Allied forces have been admonished not to retaliate in kind to barbarous acts. We were in the field one day not too long ago and heard a U.S. commander say specifically to his troops, you have to be careful. We want you to be alert. Just because they're barbarous acts against you, don't engage in them. We can hope that in the heat of battle, the U.S. and Allied forces retain the moral high ground. Thus far, the indication is they have. Contrasted with what's going on in Kuwait, Kuwait is burning. It's been torched. The last count, maybe 300 oil wells and other oil facilities aflame. Confirmed reports of roundup of Kuwaiti citizens. For one thing, some of the Iraqis didn't want witnesses to the atrocities committed there. Now, our CBS News coverage of the ongoing ground war offensive around the Persian Gulf will continue in a moment. So stay in here with us.
This is CBS.
Okay, you're trying to decide between the Jeep Cherokee and the Isuzu Trooper. Let's weigh the facts, shall we? The Isuzu Trooper comes standard with four-wheel disc brakes and triple skid plates, more cargo space, a larger fuel tank, and more headroom. Oh, one more. The Isuzu Trooper costs about $1,000 less.
Now, during Isuzu's really big sale, generous factory cash could save you up to $2,000 on Troopers.
For just $1.99, a lot of restaurants will serve you a thick, juicy hamburger. For $1.99, some restaurants will serve you a thick, juicy hamburger and crisp hot fries. But only one restaurant will serve you this thick, juicy hamburger, crisp hot fries, and your favorite soft drink, all for only $1.99. The DQ Burger Basket Deal, only at Dairy Queen.
You're watching CBS News' continuing coverage of the war in the Gulf. From Saudi Arabia, here is Dan Rather.
From the U.S. and Allied side, from its point of view, so far, so good in the launching of the ground war offensive, but it's still in the early stages. Here are the headlines of the hour. Operation Desert Storm enters what President Bush has called its final phase with the battle on the ground. The Pentagon puts the lid on all information from the front. From the American side, the British, French, and Arab sources are still talking. The U.S. charges Iraq with last-minute atrocities inside Kuwait. After more than 5 weeks of a fierce war in the air, the ground war has finally begun. Arab and British sources say now that the Allied forces are as far as 18 miles inside Kuwait. They have attacked on at least 2 other fronts, and possibly an amphibious assault is underway. There are also British reports of an Allied incursion into southern Iraq. That's the one that General Chris and Bob Schieffer were talking about a moment ago, which is expected to be the main attack. There is almost no information available from the U.S. military. Understandably, Defense Secretary Dick Cheney says that the Pentagon is going to be silent.
When it is safe to begin discussing the operation, we will do so in as much detail as we prudently can. But for now, our regular briefing schedule here at the Pentagon and in Riyadh is suspended until further notice.
As the battle was about to begin, U.S. military spokesman at the Pentagon and here in Saudi Arabia accused Saddam Hussein of a last-minute reign of terror. They said that thousands of Kuwaitis were being rounded up, tortured, and executed, and a Kuwaiti spokesman on this broadcast a short while ago confirmed that that was happening, saying that there wasn't any doubt about it, it wasn't propaganda, it was a terrible fact of the war. Let's check in with Ron Allen at the Pentagon. Ron?
Good morning, Dan. Here at the Pentagon, things have really quieted down after Secretary Cheney said that there would be a lid. That is an order that was taken very seriously around these corridors. We have been trying to find out what we can about the status of the ground battle, but information has been very difficult to come by. The Secretary, in his remarks, made it clear that there would be no information released that would in any way compromise the mission.
This phase of the combined air, land, and sea campaign has been carefully planned to force Iraq out of Kuwait with a minimum number of casualties to Allied forces. Up to now, we've been as forthcoming as possible about military operations. But from this point forward, we must limit what we say. We've now undertaken a major military operation. Allied military units are on the move. Their positions, movements, and plans must be carefully safeguarded. We must assume that the enemy is confused about what is happening on the battlefield. and it is absolutely essential that we not do anything inadvertently ourselves to clarify the picture for him. Everything we say about the operation from this point forward, every detail we offer, would increase the likelihood that the military forces of Iraq could learn more about our operations. Such information would put military operations at risk, and even the most innocent-sounding information could be used directly against the men and women whose lives are on the line carrying out these operations.
The Secretary made it clear that the attack is designed to confuse the enemy, to make him think that we are coming from directions that we might not, in fact, be coming from. He made it clear that he thought even the simplest of bits of information might in some way help Saddam Hussein. If you'll remember, the first 30-plus days of this, the air operation were designed to eliminate his command and control capability and to give him no idea or no way to see the battlefield. That has always been an advantage that the Allies thought they had, and it is one that they are trying to maximize, particularly now that this very complicated and complex ground attack has begun. Dan, back to you.
Thanks, Ron. Someone is saying, well, General Christ and Bob Schieffer were talking a moment ago about where the main force attack might go and where the other attacks have been. Part of that, most of it, has been talked about by U.S. commanders themselves. Part of it to create confusion in the mind of Saddam Hussein. Yes, we know forces are going to southern Iraq, but where do they go? Where are they headed? Are they going all the way to the Euphrates River? Are they engaged in an envelopment tactic or an encirclement tactic? Are they going to use the so-called vertical envelopment, which includes airborne assault, helicopter airborne assault, parachute assault? All of these options are available to Norman Schwarzkopf, and by throwing them out as options and sketching the rough outline of the battlefield strategy, which Saddam Hussein already knows, it creates confusion in his mind. Let's go now to the White House, and Mark Phillips is covering for us there. Mark?
Dan, there may still be a virtual blackout on the exact details of what is happening in terms of the battle in the Gulf, but we have managed to learn things over the course of the evening here about the parallel political discussions that have gone through the course of today and even extending back into yesterday. This was, of course, in the end, a political decision to go ahead with this attack, and the difficulty has been to keep the political thinking amongst the coalition on pace with what was a pretty cast in stone battle plan. As we discussed a little earlier, General Schwarzkopf had decided that this was the evening that was the optimum time for that battle to ensue. There had been a lot of discussions over the course of today between President Bush and various of the coalition participants, notably Prime Minister Major of Britain, also Chancellor Kohl, also Prime Minister Ozal, also Prime Minister Mulrooney. The one loose screw in this intricate clockwork, if you will, was that of the Soviet Union. There was a long telephone call here initiated by President Gorbachev to President Bush, beseeching him to delay this attack through a period of a day or two, because President Gorbachev said the Iraqis were feeling the pressure, that their position had changed and was coming closer and closer to the American demands, and that their position might in fact change even more. That conversation went on for 45 minutes, so clearly even with translation there was a lot of discussion back and forth. During that conversation, President Gorbachev also said that he had talked to Prime Minister Major and to President Mitterrand of France. So this was, in fact, the most delicate period, if you will, of the day politically, trying to keep the whole political front intact, and in the end it worked. The coalition, including the Soviets at this point, have announced that they are behind, obviously, this attack. Dan.
Thanks, Mark. What will keep the Iraqis fighting? Leadership, if they have it. As we've seen in the early border clashes, units with poor leaders tend to surrender en masse, and particularly those units that are faced with overwhelming firepower. Other Iraqi forces have fought well under what appears to be good leaders. Some would say that the Battle of Khafji was an example of that. It's a mixed bag on the Iraqi side. We do know this, that under what's called this air-land battle concept, the U.S. and some of its allied forces depend mightily on excellent leadership all up and down the line, and local initiative leadership. Now, that's supposed to make the big difference, particularly in an open desert armor, fire, and movement campaign. Combat over the next few days will provide the life and death test. Eric Ingberg's looked at some of the weapons the Allies are relying on to help them with their leadership. Eric?
Dan, one of the reasons that Iraq's army, even after the pummeling they've taken from the Air Force, is still dangerous is because they have plenty of tanks and they have plenty of artillery pieces. The U.S. High Command said before the ground offensive got underway that it believes it has destroyed about 40% of the Iraqi army's tanks, but that still leaves them with about 2,000, enough to pose a real threat to the troops involved in the offensive. Now, to neutralize the kind of armor that Iraq has with minimum casualties to ground troops, the Americans are relying on their control of the skies. And a big part of that is a strange-looking airplane called the A-10. It is so ugly that the pilots call it the Warthog. Already, the Warthog has made itself something of a hero to American ground troops. I've seen them salute it as it goes over. They like it so much. It is built for knocking out tanks. It carries almost 8 tons of bombs and other kinds of ordnance, including missiles that it can drop on ground targets. It is built to sustain or to withstand withering ground fire. The pilot actually rides inside a titanium cockpit so that if he is hit by machine gun fire, he can survive. The gun on the Warthog is a Gatling-type gun that fires 30-millimeter rounds. And this airplane, an old-fashioned type airplane, that is to say it doesn't have much in the way of electronics and computers and things like that, is built to be flown. One pilot says it's ugly and mean. It's a pilot's kind of airplane. And when American armored and mechanized infantry are exposed, have their flanks exposed, the way they're going to have in this kind of a headlong dash against Iraqi targets, the kind of control of the skies that the Warthog can provide will be critical, Dan.
There are a lot of Iraqi tanks left in there, particularly with experienced tankers in the Republican Guard. The weapons to get them, the M1 tank weapon, which has longer range, the TOW guided missiles on the ground, the Apache and other helicopters that can attack from very close in, and aircraft such as the Warthog.
Control of the sky is absolutely essential to the Americans' ability to get through this without a lot of casualties.
Thanks, Eric. There are, as we know, many Americans of Arab heritage. How are they reacting to this? Drew Griffin of our CBS affiliate KIRO-TV in Seattle has a report from one mosque.
It is a regular night of prayer at Seattle's Islamic Mosque, but those arriving here say this is no regular night. Tonight, as they kneel to pray, they pray for an end to bloodshed in their sacred homelands.
We feel the pain. No matter who gets killed there, we are human beings.
With their prayers come outrage at President Bush, blaming him for rushing into a ground war, when just this morning Iraq's foreign minister was talking peace, giving them hope.
Nobody have anything to lose when they talk peace. And they really, George Bush himself realized the peace could work out. And that just did not work with his macho image.
The people of the Islamic Mosque of Seattle do not view this war as George Bush versus Saddam Hussein or Iraq versus the United States. This is a war where Muslims will be fighting Muslims, something that tugs at the heart of their Islamic religion.
For all of them, this is a disaster. Nobody is happy with this war. I think innocent people will die.
And so tonight they pray for the innocent people and a quick end to the fighting in the Persian Gulf. At Seattle's Islamic Mosque, Drew Griffin for CBS News.
Sari Nasser of Jordan University in Amman joins us now. Thank you for being with us, Professor. Welcome. As a Palestinian, what's your reaction to the beginning of the ground war?
Well, our reaction is that we're sorry that such a battle had to take place or has to take place now. But you see, I think that as a Palestinian, we wonder that since we have been thrown out, ever since we have been thrown out of Palestine in 1948 and in 1967, we haven't seen the United States come to our help. For such a long time, America did almost nothing to help us return to our land. The United States claims today that it is trying to implement the United Nations resolutions. And there are so many resolutions concerning the problem of Palestine. And there is nothing. America did not do anything. And we are sorry to see America coming into this area to use its armament, its armies, to destroy, to fight. They always tell us, the United States, that we have to arrive at a negotiated settlement with Israel. And yet, they refuse to negotiate with Iraq. And that's how we feel. We feel very, very sorry indeed.
Well, Professor, you know it's the American way to hear opposing points of view, to hear all points of view. Respectfully, may I ask, do you believe that Saddam Hussein invaded, occupied Kuwait to help the Palestinian cause?
Well, I think you see that there is a misconception about Saddam and Iraq and what he did to Kuwait. By the way, as Palestinians, we are against the occupation of Kuwait or any land that does not belong to those occupiers, because we are occupied ourselves. However, I think that you must remember that Saddam Hussein is not the cause of what is happening today in the Middle East. He is a symptom, as Nasser was, Jamal Abdel Nasser of Egypt was at one time. You see, in 1956, France and Britain attacked Nasser. They attacked him, and it was called then collusion. The United States was not a part of that, and we were very grateful for that. However, 20 years hence or so, we find that the United States is coming in with France and Britain again under the name of coalition to fight another leader. Now, I don't think that you are really getting at the cause of what is happening in the Middle East. I think you are chasing shadows. Saddam is a man who will one day die, whether of natural causes or otherwise. There will be other Saddams. The issue at hand is the Palestinian problem. Unless you help to solve this problem, you will never get a stable Middle East, and we will never get peace. We are very, very sorry indeed to hear that the United States is here to fight, because for a long time, the negative predispositions of the Arabs towards the West would be reinforced and would be intensified.
Professor, thank you very much for being with us.
You're welcome.
One does not have to agree with your point of view to say that you have a right to say it. We appreciate you being with us. The fighting on the ground goes on. The full extent of it, the scope of it is unclear, but we know that along the border of Saudi Arabia with Kuwait and Iraq, and on the sea very near the Kuwaiti shoreline, that attacks are underway. Earlier tonight, I talked with CBS News reporter Bob McEwen, who was right near the front line. I'm going to replay the tape of that conversation for you.
Well, Dan, it's first light here, and this is one of the areas where oil wells have been burning, so there's a great deal of oily gray in the sky. We are, as you said, located just over a mile from the border between Saudi Arabia and Kuwait in eastern Saudi Arabia. Until yesterday morning, the front line was a quarter mile from our position. We could see it. It was a line of light artillery vehicles. Yesterday at 8 o'clock in the morning, a column of tanks moved in from the west, and something quite unusual happened. Usually the bombardment here in the time we've been here for the past 4 or 5 days has taken place mostly at night. At 9 o'clock yesterday morning, there was bombardment from every direction, from a warship, presumably the Wisconsin or the Missouri out in the Gulf, from artillery and overhead from bombers. And under that cover, the tanks that had arrived from the west moved up along the sand wall, the 12-foot sand wall that's a mile from us along the border, and moved into position. So the front moved up. We, at first light this morning, can't see them. We don't know if they're still there. We don't know if they've moved over the night. But one thing we can tell you is that the bombardment last night, and it continues to this moment, has been exceedingly heavy, heavier than anything we have heard. We were watching it last night. Because of the oil in the sky, we couldn't see the flashes. We could hear the booms. The ground rumbles every time a bomb falls in Kuwait a mile from us, or one of the warships fires its big 16-inch guns. And we could literally hear the shells from the Gulf, from the warship, whichever is the Wisconsin or the Missouri, going overhead. So exceedingly heavy bombardment here that continues to this moment.
Bob McEwen, we believe yours to be the very first report, certainly the first independent report from the battlefront itself. As dawn breaks, what are you seeing and hearing, and have you talked to troops, talked to Marines up there? What's their mood? What's their morale?
We're behind the Allied lines. Most of the troops in this area are Saudi infantry and artillery and armored vehicles run by the Qataris. To be very honest, we haven't approached them because we don't want them to know that we are here. But when certainly last night got the sense that something was happening, before the bombardment began, which was 10 o'clock our time, 2 p.m. Eastern, it was very, very quiet. On previous nights, you could hear voices, you could hear yelling, you could hear people off in the distance. There was none of that last night. It was eerily quiet. Earlier in the day, we had heard the discharge of machine gun fire. We presume it was just the Saudi army testing their equipment. So there was an eerie calm last night, followed by the heaviest bombardment that we've seen up here for 4 or 5 days. Let me just give you a sense of what we have seen in this area, and I don't think there are any military secrets here. This is what everyone knew existed up here. We've driven west along the front line, literally in front of the artillery. And it's the impossibly flat Saudi plain here. It's desert, and it just goes on forever. And as you looked out across it, you saw what appeared to be gopher hills. What they were, as you got closer, were sand walls, and behind each of them would be a light artillery piece, a heavy gun, or a tank. We presume, we didn't venture out there yesterday for fear of being detected, but we presume that a lot of that has moved up towards the border. We saw a lot of movement on the roads yesterday.
Bob, of course, the guns being silent for a period, that's classic when you're going to launch a big offensive. Then the signal is given for the terrific barrage, and so it played itself out just by the book. Bob, is there any indication there as to whether the Iraqis are still in their first line of defense, or whether they have moved back to their second line of defense as the Allies begin to bombardment and indeed move across the border?
Well, all we have on that is a few discussions we've had with various individuals in this area. And again, they've had to be couched in the most tactful way. But the original expectation up to a couple of days ago was that the initial Iraqi line, and we are a mile from the border where I'm speaking to you now, the Iraqi line was about 8 kilometers or 5 miles behind that. And it was presumed that from the border back to that Iraqi position 5 miles farther back, there was a classic defensive system that the Iraqis have set up. The minefields, the trenches, perhaps filled with oil to capture tanks, and behind that, the troops who have had, at this point, more than 6 months to dig in. There's no way of knowing that. Frankly, we can see into Kuwait. On a night, on a good day, before the oil well started to burn 2 days ago, we could see into Kuwait. We still couldn't detect that, so they're farther back than our line of sight. They're not very far away, and the ground here rumbles. Everything shakes when a bomb hits over there, so we're that close. We have no way of knowing whether they're still at that 5 mile point or whether they've moved even farther back.
As part of our CBS News Live coverage of the beginning of the ground war offensive, we're talking to Bob McEwen, CBS News reporter who's 1 mile from the Kuwaiti border. Bob, any indication of how far up you think the Allies are now? Well,
all we know is that when the sun went down yesterday, we could see the tanks along the sand wall a mile from us. Now, these are what they call the berms that they've built all the way along the border. What you would see from my position, if it were that kind of day again, and with the oil in the air, it's not likely to be today, you see a Saudi border tower. You see the first village across the border in Kuwait, the border crossing, and between that, this 12-foot wall, yesterday lined with, I presume, Saudi and Qatari tanks. I don't know if they're still there, but the bombardment's been ferocious overnight, and I presume that they haven't ventured too far into it. So I presume they are still there, just waiting for this bombardment to take its toll and then to make their move.
And ground to air, that is to air to ground attacks from, have you seen much air attack through that smoke from the burning oil wells?
Well, we hear the planes overhead all the time. And it's just impossible to see anything. It's like an oily tarpaulin hanging over our heads here, but you can certainly hear them. Some of the other sounds you do hear, the spotter plane, which is not very high tech, and which you can distinguish. It sounds almost like a Cessna overhead. And before the warships fire, what you hear is what they call the drone, and it is an automatic 12-foot plane, essentially, which goes out and takes surveillance photographs of the Iraqi positions and sends them back to either the Missouri or the Wisconsin, whichever has been firing recently. And that is aptly named.
If I may,
it's called the drone, and it drones. So those are some of the sounds we've been hearing: the spotter planes, the bombers high overhead, the drone coming out from the warships, and this constant rumble beneath our feet. I mean, literally, I am vibrating as I speak to you as the bombs go off a mile or 5 miles or 10 miles into Kuwait.
Bob McEwen. That was a tape of Bob McEwen's first report from the battlefront. It was the first independent report of the evening by any reporter from right on the front line. Baghdad radio predicts victory in most noble battle. Dateline, Nicosia, Cyprus. Baghdad radio and the first Iraqi comment addressing the Allied ground offensive predicted victory today in what it called the most noble battle in history. Baghdad radio said, and I quote, "Iraq is not a prize for anyone. It is not going to surrender to threats. Iraq's army has been prepared for Martyrdom's Day, which is unique in the history of wars." The broadcast was monitored in Cyprus. It gave no details about the fighting. It spoke to Iraqi troops, and again I quote, "The whole world is waiting, O heroes, for your great achievement, and follows your brave strikes that you continue to aim at the enemies of God and humanity." And then Baghdad radio concluded by saying to its troops, "You are waging now the most noble battle and achieving the greatest victories of the army of atheism and aggression, the first of its kind in the history of wars." Baghdad radio calling the U.S. and Allied armies an army of atheism and aggression. Dr. Bob Arnott is here with us again now. What about evacuating the inevitable casualties? We hope there'll be few, but there are bound to be some.
Dan, one of the biggest problems as they've looked at this system is backing up casualties. So military medical experts said, how can we prevent this from happening? Now, there's a facility called Medbase America that may see the majority of the Army casualties. At the front end of this, they have clearing platoons to get people in and seen as quickly as they can. At the back end, they have this staging facility, which is unique. This is right on a runway tarmac. These people are about to be evacuated out of theater. Every man they can evacuate means another bed that's free. Some of them have spinal injuries, broken legs, self-inflicted bullet wounds of one kind or another. Now, this is called a tactical evacuation. This is a C-130 Hercules. They are evacuated within the theater. The other kind of evacuation is strategic, meaning that they take them out of this theater, say, to Germany. Now, these people may have bones that are not yet set. They may have surgery that still needs to be performed, but they are stable enough to be able to put them on this transport. And look at this picture. See how crowded it is in there. They have them stacked 4 or 5 high. I talked to one of the physicians who said that these flights can be just wild. Someone's blood pressure is dropping, someone else has an irregular heart rate. So they need to treat that, and of course they're very proficient. They're real experts at being able to treat this in the air. It's a big part of this medical system, being able to evacuate these patients to make room for more critically injured patients.
Dr. Bob Arnott, thanks. Emphasizing, as General Schwarzkopf has right through, that one of the goals of the Allied ground offensive is to keep casualties to a minimum. No one can expect to eliminate them, but one reason that General Schwarzkopf's plan is so bold and entails so many risks is that part of his orders were to keep casualties as low as possible. One key to how quickly the Allied forces can move and how effective they will be is how effective the M1A1 tank is going to perform. This is the key to General Schwarzkopf's strategy. We know the M1A1 can outlast the Soviet-made T-55s, T-62s, and T-72s, but can it get to the enemy in good shape? Experts tell us that if the crews do 3 simple procedures on the way north, they should be just fine. Simple. Check the oil filters, check the fuel filters, check the suspension system fluids. Simple maintenance to keep a multi-million-dollar piece of equipment running, gunning, and winning, the M1A1 tank. Now, here are the headlines on the war at this hour. The ground war is on, what President Bush calls the final phase of the liberation of Kuwait. U.S. and Allied forces are said to be advancing rapidly northward into Kuwait and Iraq. In one early victory, it's reported an island commanding the approach to Kuwait City was taken. Hundreds of Iraqi troops were captured there by U.S. Marines. President Bush says that he has ordered the military to use, and I quote now, all forces available to what he calls eject the Iraqi army from Kuwait. British and Arab reports, one by the British News Service, say the Allies are attacking on at least 4 fronts, including amphibious assaults on the coast of Kuwait, and that they are conducting a variety of diversions to keep the Iraqis off balance. That was part of the plan, was to keep these surprises going. Inside Kuwait, the troops head into a hellish scene, burning oil rigs, spanning the horizon, pumping dense black smoke into the sky and confusing the battleground. U.S. commanders have designed their ground offensive for a quick strike in hopes of getting a quick victory, but they warn it will not be easy. Our CBS News coverage will continue. We'll pick up in the morning, Dan Rather for CBS News.
Stay with CBS News for continuing coverage of the war in the Gulf. This is CBS.
The Ford truck leadership sell-down continues. 7,000 trucks.
7,000 trucks?
17 days.
17 days?
The best selection ever of F-150s, F-250s, F-350s, 4x4s, and supercabs.
7,000 trucks? 17 days?
It's the Northwest Ford Dealers Truck Leadership Sell-Down. Great selection, great prices, but it all ends February 24th. See it at your local Northwest Ford dealer today.
And I'll have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich on Williams wheat bread, pronto.
And why don't you put me down for a meatloaf sandwich on Williams white bread?
Believe I'll go with the liverwurst on Williams, slathered in Dijon.
I'll have the BLT and hold the B.
Tuna fish on Williams bread.
Williams, and that cheese with the holes in it, and
Sprouts.
Nobody bakes it better than Williams.
And tell him not to put those sissy toothpicks on it.
You're watching KOIN TV, Channel 6, live from the heart of Portland, the news station for Oregon and Southwest Washington. This is Newsroom 6.
Good evening, I'm Ken Boddy. Here in Portland, people watched and listened as President Bush made good on his word to send U.S. ground troops into battle. Paul Gowan went out to see how some people here reacted to the news of the fighting.
Storyline of the hour. The U.S.-led ground offensive against Iraqi forces in Kuwait is underway. It's been
the first word of the ground war came just after 5:30. For a while, life went on like normal as word filtered around. Here at the Kingston, the Oregon-USC basketball game held the interest. But at 7 o'clock, when the president appeared to speak to the country, the banner stopped, eyes and ears aimed at the TV.
I have therefore directed General Norman Schwarzkopf, in conjunction with coalition forces, to use all forces available, including ground forces, to eject the Iraqi army from Kuwait.
Patrons here weren't surprised. Most felt the war was necessary.
It is better to get it over with now, or this will go on for years and years and thousands more people dying than what we even imagine, if it does not start now and get over with.
All over Portland, people watched, trying to catch the bits and pieces of news that came from the Middle East in the first few hours. At the Kingston, owner Gary Jondolfs tried to sum up his customers' thoughts.
Everybody thinks that if we don't go in and take them out, then somebody else's kids are going to have to do it 5 or 10 years from now. It's going to happen sooner or later. It's just something that has to be done. The man has to go.
The expected, the long-awaited, had happened. The other shoe had finally dropped.
And God bless the United States of America. Thank you very much.
Thank you, America. All right. Yes, sir.
In Northwest Portland with photographer Art Wright. Paul Gallen, Newsroom 6.
Northwest families with loved ones in the Gulf War are watching the start of the ground offensive anxiously. Most spent the evening in front of their television sets, waiting for word on the success of Operation Desert Storm. Lisa Kaiser talked with one mother, hoping the war will end soon.
Barbara O'Leary can't concentrate on making dinner tonight, not since she heard the ground war is on.
Oh, I was frightened all over again, like I was when he went over there. He went over there the day the war started.
Her son is 38-year-old Michael O'Leary. He's serving in the Army National Guard in Saudi Arabia, the 2186th Division, a maintenance battalion. O'Leary spent 12 years in the Marines, but worked as a custodian for Portland Public Schools before he was called up. The guardsman called his mother last night, saying it may be his last chance.
And he said that they think they might be moving again. And I asked him if the sand is flying around. He says, yeah, everything he has is full of sand. And he doesn't like it there.
Mrs. O'Leary watched President Bush talk about the ground war. She backs his decision to move.
It's the only way we're going to get this thing over with. Force them out. Because that guy is not going to do anything willingly.
Although her only child is not on the front lines, he's supporting the troops and counting the days until he's back in Oregon.
I just told him we all want him to come home. He says, yeah, so do I. And I asked him, I said, are you going to stay in the military now? Because he was always so gung-ho about military. He said, no, not after this.
In Northeast Portland, Elisa Kaiser, Newsroom 6.
The start of the Allied ground offensive left one Oregon congressman feeling both sad and angry. Mike Kopetsky says he is sad about the fact that men and women will die in the ground war. The anger aimed at Saddam Hussein, who Kopetsky says has no regard for human life. More now from Greg Hirakawa in Washington.
In a quiet office tonight, Oregon Congressman Mike Kopetsky said, it is time now more than ever to support the president and to support the American troops fighting in the Middle East.
I have some very good friends whose children are in the Gulf. I know some of them. I'm worried about them, their safety. And so I think, as I'm just another American this evening, is very worried about our sons and daughters over there.
The freshman congressman had once asked for patience on behalf of the president, but tonight wasn't about to second-guess what he believes was a military decision. The blame for the ground war, he says, rests solely with Saddam Hussein, adding the Iraqi leader has made what will no doubt be one of the greatest mistakes in history.
By allowing the action to continue is that he has no regard for life. He's not a leader. He should have never become the head of a government because he knows that he's lost this war and he's going to commit his own troops to certain death.
There's obvious sadness in this town tonight, sadness that a diplomatic solution could not be reached. But many believe this country could only wait so long, and time eventually had to run out for Saddam Hussein. Greg Hirakawa for Newsroom 6, Washington.
One of Oregon's most prominent Jewish leaders says it is unfortunate the Persian Gulf conflict has come to this. But Rabbi Emanuel Rose also says he supports what President Bush has done. And he says Israel is still in great danger from Saddam Hussein.
Yeah, this is a very, very dangerous time for Israel because Hussein, being the madman that he is, not madman, evil man, what Israel is afraid of, that it just out of desperation and his normal viciousness might attempt to launch chemical gas weapons against Israel during this short period of time. So they are very concerned about that at this point. I have a feeling of great anguish for those Iraqi soldiers as well, because they live under an unbelievable tyrant, one of the most brutal men that's lived in this century. And that's why this has to go on, unfortunately.
Rose says that he will offer his prayers for the troops in the Persian Gulf. Well, joining us now live in the newsroom is Professor Edward Siegel. He's an international relations expert from Reed College, and thanks for joining us tonight. First of all, why didn't diplomacy work in this case, especially with the Soviet peace plan that seemed to be making some movement before this started?
Well, the question is, what is it we are really trying to do now in the war, which meant also in the peace negotiations, besides getting the Iraqi troops out of Kuwait? What we really have in mind is to make Iraq's army no longer capable of waging offensive war against its neighbors. This aim was really implicit since the crisis began in August. It's been implicit in all the negotiations since then, and the trouble with the Soviet terms is that it left the Iraqi army intact. It's very difficult to persuade a ruler like Saddam to disarm, even partially disarm voluntarily. This is why, in a certain sense, I don't want to say the ground war is inevitable, but it was implied in the situation from the very beginning.
Should the United States actually target Saddam Hussein himself?
The Middle East would certainly be a better and safer and happier place if Saddam were not there. But I think it's a question of when and also of how. We have to tailor our immediate war aims to our military capacity and, frankly, in a sense, our military convenience. And I mean convenience in a serious sense of how many casualties we want. I don't see how we could capture Saddam without having our army driving into Baghdad, a city of 3.5 million people, all of them no doubt unanimously hostile to our armed force. I wouldn't want to see our Army and Marines being put in that position. I would rather see us negotiate with Saddam near the end of military activities and then leave it to the Iraqis to take care of him in their own way. I don't think we ought to be put in the position of having to construct a new Iraqi government ourselves. That would be giving us an impossible task.
Well, speaking of hostilities, what about the long-term effect of this ground war with heavy casualties on both sides? Americans are not liked in that part of the world even before this started.
The trouble with history is that there's always good news and bad news. There's never any clean solution. Every solution will bring its own problems. So there will be an improvement in that presumably sooner or later he will be gone and Iraq will no longer be the threat that it was through last summer and for the last 10 years. The bad news is that we will garner immense hostility from the Arab world. That's why I think we should take what prudent steps we can to minimize that hostility, real and widespread though it nonetheless will be. Then we will really have to get to work to do something on outstanding problems, and everyone knows, and they knew this before August, that that meant the Israeli-Palestinian problem essentially.
One last question here. What about the long-term stability of the region? Is it possible that we would be able to go into this situation and not have to occupy in some way that area for a long time to come?
Well, occupying Iraq or Saudi Arabia would be really very difficult and should be avoided at all costs. But I'm certain we will need at least naval and air forces there. We might need, if we have some air bases in Saudi Arabia, some minimal land forces to protect them. But I think we should keep the land forces to an absolute minimum.
Thank you very much, Professor Siegel from Reed College. Well, people on both sides of the war took their messages to the streets of Portland today.
War psychotic! Peace is patriotic! War psychotic! Peace is patriotic!
This group carried its anti-war message in front of the Federal Building in downtown Portland this morning at 9 o'clock. A couple of hours later, this group gathered in Pioneer Courthouse Square in support of the war. The anti-war protesters gathered on the fringes of the square. The two sides demonstrated in peace, and Portland police reported no major incidents. Time now for a preview of sports, coming up with Ann Schatz. And the Ducks were in action tonight.
The Oregon Ducks had a very important ball game on the road tonight. I can't give you good news, but I can give